welcome to Election Brief with me, Emefa Akosia Adeti. We're live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 125, and all social media handles around the world on myjoyonline.com. Election Headquarters is brought to you by Petrosol Platinum Energy, Energizing Dreams, the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, and the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Now, together, as the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, German Ozone Medical Center, Alternative Therapy, Dental, Wellness and Beauty, Chobot Technologies, a convenient service, and Youth Bridge Foundation, bridging the gap for positive youth development. Now, today, the High Court has dismissed an application filed by Bernard Mornah, the flag bearer of the People's National Convention, as you know as PNC, who was seeking to overturn the Electoral Commission's decision to disqualify him from contesting in the upcoming presidential elections. Now, the ruling marks a significant setback for Mr. Mornah and his party, just weeks ahead of the December polls. Now, Mr. Mornah's disqualification was based on issues surrounding his nomination forms, which the Electoral Commission deemed insufficient to allow him to contest the elections. Now, in response, Mornah filed an application to challenge the decision, arguing that the grounds for his disqualifications were unjust. Now, the High Court has, however, upheld the Electoral Commission's ruling. A flag bearer of the People's National Convention Party, Bernard Mornah, joins me in studio. Now, good afternoon, sir, and thank you for joining us.
You say good afternoon on a terrible afternoon like this. It's certainly not a good afternoon for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, it tells me that you're obviously not in a good mood.
I'm displeased and totally flabbergasted by the decision of the High Court to uphold the Electoral Commission's disqualification of my person and the People's National Convention from participating in election 2024. I don't know what my presence in the elections, what fear is it for the system that every effort is being made to ensure that I am not on the ballot. But as I told my lawyers, halfway through the reading, I sensed that the judge was going to make the kind of conclusions. And so halfway through the readings, I sent my lawyers that this decision that the judge will ultimately reach, we must seek a review at the Supreme Court, and that is where I'm heading to now. Okay,
now let's stay in the High Court before we even get to the Supreme Court. So you're saying that in court today, they didn't look at your evidence. What evidence are you talking about?
We went to court on the gravamen of the letter that the Electoral Commission wrote to us on the 20th of September 2024, which letter stated, among other things, that the EC technical and IT teams set up for the purposes of vetting presidential nomination forms identify several errors and omissions. What is your understanding of several errors and omissions?
It could be some of the purported stories that one person signed for 4 people on your form.
Is that an error?
What would that
That would have been a defined aberration. Not so. That would have been a defined aberration. So when you come and make the vague pronouncement that there were several errors and omissions, which are the errors and omissions? Because if you are claiming that some 4 people signed, or one person signed for some 4 people, so you could have talked about signature identity, right? But I know about twins, that if I put them here, except probably fingerprints.
Did one person sign for 4
No.
persons? Okay.
No.
And so the EC...
So it's a no.
Okay.
And the EC, when they gave me the forms on the 13th, which was corrected and resubmitted, never reported to me that there were several errors and, what do we call it? Detected several errors and omissions. So how was I going to know that there are several errors and omissions, except that the EC deliberately hid those errors and omissions away from me so that they can now come and use that as a basis for which they will disqualify me.
So today in court, what did the court say was the reason for your...
In fact, I was flabbergasted, totally dumbfounded. Listen, the judge said that we needed to be meticulous in the filling of the forms. And then I asked the question, rationally, The person who is setting the exam or putting the exam question, a teacher who is setting exam questions, makes mistakes, but expect the student not to make mistake in answering the questions. The EC itself made mistakes. They were not meticulous. In the churning out of the presidential nomination forms, in the churning out of the parliamentary nomination forms, and I pointed that out not only to the media, but also to the court, that, for instance, at a particular point when they wanted to ask about the candidate's personal records, the EC went to ask of 6 instead of 6. Okay. Was that meticulous on the part of the EC?
Okay.
And so the judge is saying that if you are coming to equity, you come with clean hands. Mm-hmm. So the EC that is talking about correction of errors or errors on my form also made errors. So who is now coming to equity? I'm
still trying to figure out exactly what the High Court said would be the reason why.
So they said that I was not meticulous in filling the form, okay, and that I was seeking the highest office of the land. Right. So we should have been meticulous. Okay. And I'm asking, even the person setting the standard for me to seek the highest office also made errors.
Okay.
So how come that the judge did not point out, even as the evidence was provided to the judge, that the EC who is asking us of these litmus tests, they failed there? That is one. Number two, if they say that ocular observation, it means that using your eyes to see.
So basically you're admitting that you made errors.
You don't make errors? Do you want me to point out an error you made before the start of the show?
Please proceed.
Okay, so I will not proceed on that. But clearly, everybody...
Are you admitting?
I'm saying that, why, we made errors in the first instance. Mm-hmm. The EC pointed it to us. Okay. We corrected them. And of the 24 presidential aspirants, only 3 did not make any error.
Okay.
So 21 of us were made to understand that we made errors. The forms were given to us and we corrected them. The PNC and myself, like the other 21, corrected our errors. So what is it that the EC is doing?
Okay.
Is it the things that we are hearing that, look, this is a decision by the system not to allow Bernard Mornah because I'm not friendly to what and what?
So you're headed to the Supreme Court?
Oh, we are already on our way there.
Okay. What other evidence are you going to be tendering in other Supreme Court?
One, you cannot use ocular evidence to identify signatures, assuming that the EC was right. Because even where they said that there were signature identity, immediately my team was drawn, and Taishi was drawn, those people were called and then they came and ratified those identities. Mm. What the EC presented to the court is the old version and not the corrected version. So we are going to prove that at the Supreme Court. Okay. The second point that we want to establish is that we went to court on the basis of claiming that there were several errors and omissions on our forms. And you went to court and you could not identify several errors. In fact, the week before, last Wednesday, the judge himself pointed out to the EC that you said that they did not sign, John Arthur did not sign. But he, the judge, can see that on page 9, which you have brought to the court as evidence, there is a signature there. Then the EC now turns and said that that was a mistake. They wanted to say that the signatures are identical. Okay. So you can see clearly that even in court, the affidavits in opposition, the EC still made errors.
And so if the Supreme Court's ruling doesn't go in your favor, what next?
Well, I don't know what next step the legal team will take. But we are certain that, look, this is the case of travesty of justice. And above all, this is a test that multi-party democracy is being crippled. The PNC, MPP, and NDC are the 3 surviving political parties since 1992. I have been at the forefront of filling forms for candidates since then. So it is unthinkable that I will be subjected to something that we have been doing over the years, that it is only because Bernard Mornah is presidential candidate. That is why we are going through this turmoil.
You have generally said that you're seeking for election or electoral reforms. What are some of these reforms that you're seeking? Advocate for particularly?
Look, what sense does it make really? In this age of digitalization and in the advancement that we have, that they urge you to go around 261 districts to go and take hard physical evidence. The EC, in their letter to us, said that they were in the process of calling and reaching out to our supporters to see whether they gave their consent. Consent is what? Yes, I endorsed or I gave Bernard Mornah the chance to endorse the form. Not so. So that consent is different from coming to tell me that we are looking for signatures, assuming that that is what we are looking for. Number two, what sense does it really make? The hard copies that the EC is keeping at the headquarters, what are they going to use it for? Presidential forms can be filled online and submitted.
Okay.
Why are we going through all these laborious processes? In the end, then you come and say you are disqualifying people.
Okay.
What is the substance in some of these things that we are doing? The third one is that I still insist, every money that the Electoral Commission of Ghana needs to run elections in this country is provided by the state, meaning you have contributed to it. Everything they need is provided by the state. So why is the Electoral Commission taking people's money? In addition to the 100,000 that we, the presidential candidates, had to pay, we still had to pay for our parliamentary candidates across the country. In our instance, we paid for about 26 parliamentary candidates at 10,000 Ghana cedis each.
Okay.
What is the Electoral Commission going to use the people's money when those monies, if availed to the parliamentary candidates or the presidential candidate, they could use to print other paraphernalia to support themselves?
So accountability and the use of more technological means for registration, and then the third one is?
So clearly, what I'm saying is that this Electoral Commission is living in medieval times.
Okay.
And they want to use that to frustrate people, even as they want to claim that we made errors. I'm insisting that the examiner made errors in the setting up of the examination questions and expect the student to pass. Okay. And the judge will come and agree to such a warped argument. I am scandalized.
Finally, so the NDC's flag bearer seems to have gone to battle on your behalf, suggesting that there's some people on the ballot paper that do not even deserve to be on that paper. And that, do you think that you qualify to be on that ballot paper?
Am I now your choice of a president? That is to tell you, and if you want, go to social media alone. After this interview, go and check the responses you get to the question you ask. It will tell you that I am more competent than the majority of the people that are on the ballot. And in any case, what did the NDC flag bearer say? I want to thank him for openly showing solidarity with a Ghanaian who wants to help in ensuring that multi-party democracy enhances. The PNC want to thank him for openly coming out to say that, look, allow people who want to participate in presidential elections so that the citizens will determine whether they want to. What is more averting than the citizens' choice of a president? Why would some people go and sit at some obscure corner and determine that I am not qualified? At the day that they claimed that their IT people found errors, was the PNC IT person there? To prove that what the IT people saw, our IT people can confirm that there was something wrong. Their technical team, they want to say that the PNC technical team is not there. So some people just decide to go and hide at some corner, decide to come out with their concocted story about what is not my fault. Then they say that this is your fault. Then I have to be going around left, right, and center and defending the lies that they have said about me. Now, finally, there were some other people who took offense at John Dramani Mahama's support for my candidature and saying that, look, there was nothing wrong for us to be on the ballot. And he just said some people are more qualified than them. And some other people decided that they are the some people who the flag bearer of the NDC was referring to. So those people, you ask them, what is their locus? So are they saying that they are such mediocre that any reference to Bernard Mornah is better than or worthy to be on the ballot? It simply refers to them. I didn't hear my brother Baumia come to complain.
Okay.
I didn't hear Alan come to complain.
Okay.
I didn't hear kid brother Cheddar come to complain. Kofi Kurantin come to complain. Okay. Why is it that some other innocuous people decided that it was their duty to go and respond to something that did not matter to them? So what it simply means is that who the cap fits, let them wear it. And I think that clearly in the definition of things, they can see that they themselves are substandard. And therefore, they quickly had to run out to the public to seek sympathy or favor. But clearly, it doesn't wash with me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mornah, for talking to us. Thank you so much. We wish you all the best going to the Supreme Court. We'll follow the story very keenly. All right, so moving on, with barely 24 hours for Parliament to reconvene, there is tension as both the NDC and the NPP caucuses in the House carry themselves as the majority in Parliament. Now, the NDC in Parliament alleges there are moves by the NPP government to deploy soldiers to the Parliament House on Tuesday. It follows the tense past few days that after the Speaker declared 4 seats vacant, but the declaration stayed by the Supreme Court. We'll hear from the caucus Chief Whip, but first, here's a report by my colleague, Parliamentary Affairs Correspondent, Kweku Asante.
It was midnight on the 7th of January 2021. Heavily armed soldiers were deployed into the Chamber of Parliament. The election of the Speaker was ongoing and the tensions were palpable. After intense confrontation between the NDC MPs and the soldiers, the military withdrew. The 8th Parliament started on a chaotic note and looks set to end on an even worse note. It follows the declaration made by the Speaker of Parliament declaring 4 seats vacant.
I proceed to inform the House that by the notification of the polls, the following members of Parliament have by their actions vacated their seats in Parliament.
This declaration has since been stayed by the Supreme Court, which ordered the Parliament of Ghana to allow these MPs perform their responsibilities. The NPP side lauded this as victory for democracy.
We are Democrats. We don't believe in violence. We don't believe in mischief and unnecessary political chaos. We came to court believing that the court will do right, and indeed the court has just done that.
But the NDC MPs insist they are the majority in the House, despite the highest court's ruling.
The NDC MPs in Parliament now constitute the majority caucus in line with the standing orders of Ghana's Parliament. Fellow countrymen and women, the NDC now constitute the majority caucus in this 8th Parliament. We will jealously protect our new majority status and will not bow, retreat, nor surrender our lawfully earned status.
With the House set to resume on Tuesday, tensions are at a high, with influential Ghanaians calling for calm and cool heads to prevail.
Now, still in Parliament, MP for Adaklu and Chief Whip of the NDC caucus, Kwame Governs Agboja, says they will resist any attempt to deploy military to Parliament on Tuesday when the House reconvenes.
If you notice, on that fateful day of the beginning of this Parliament, it was government that ordered the military and the police to enter the chamber and assault members of Parliament. Indeed, my colleague, Honorable, our colleague, filed a motion for those individuals, of which we have details of those military officers and what they did in the chamber.
But a member of the Council of State and former GBA President Sam Okujeto, the tension is not good for the country. He, however, wants the orders of the Supreme Court to be respected. He spoke to my colleague Emefa Apawu on the probe.
Well, it just had to be clear to all of us that Parliament makes the law, but Parliament does not interpret the law. And the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It was not Parliament that made the Constitution. It's the people of Ghana. If you read the preamble, it's quite clear. And the power to interpret the Constitution is given to the Supreme Court and not to Parliament. And therefore, there's a controversy as to whether any particular power can be exercised or not exercised. It is the responsibility of the Supreme Court and not of Parliament. It's rather surprising that my legal colleagues in Parliament don't want to apply their mind to legality, but rather trying to use sentiments to interpret the law. And I don't think it's in our own interest, because the kind of confusion which is being created now, I do not know where it's going to lead this nation. There is a president who is elected. He serves in office until 7th January, where somebody else is sworn in. Beyond that, there is no other person who can be a government of this country.
Now, is this the most significant challenge yet to Ghana's 32-year-old democracy, with the two major arms of government seemingly at odds? Is this the time for the executive to intervene? Now, how can this deadlock be resolved without compromising the country's democratic credentials? What does the principle of separation of powers truly mean if one branch can influence the decision of another? If mishandled, what could this mean for the region, especially with growing distrust in democracy and Ghana being viewed as a beacon of hope? Well, to help unpack these critical questions, we're joined by Dr. Rashid Dramani from the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Now, so firstly, what is your take on the growing trend of MPs frequently seeking court interventions for interpretations of parliamentary procedures?
I think it's a worrying trend. Worrying because it's setting precedents that could come back someday to haunt Parliament when minorities change. Because judicial reviews are acceptable in democracies, but most of the time they are rare, because of the fact that, there is an effort in every democracy to respect the separation of powers principles. Even if in our democracy we don't have clear separation, particularly between the executive and the legislature, but we have clear separation between the legislature and the judiciary. I have seen more interventions of the court in the work of Parliament in this 8th Parliament than all the 7 parliaments before it. And if we are not careful, someday our Parliament might be crippled. Whilst we want to grow our parliamentary practice and settle matters that are usually unclear, the speed with which we run to the court might one day render our parliament ineffective,
okay,
or maybe grind it to a halt.
Okay. Okay. I mean, with this said, with the declining trust in democracy across the West African sub-region and Ghana viewed as a beacon of hope, what could be the implications of these if they are not properly addressed?
Well, if they are not properly addressed, as you rightly noted, I mean, today data after data shows clearly that people don't trust the people who lead them. I mean, the Right Honorable Speaker gave a lecture in Legon recently and provided some data, and I've seen a lot of research which shows, go to Afrobarometer, you go to Transparency International, you go to all, data sources. There is a lot of mistrust. We have pockets of trust. So in our sub-region, our country is one of the few that is holding the hope that is left for democracy. And if we don't solve this issue, we might end up with a situation where the little hope that is left in terms of trust that people can hang on to disappears.
Okay, well, still in Ghana, Doc, though, is this time, would you say that is the appropriate time for the three arms of government to really engage in some form of dialogue?
Yes, I've said this since yesterday, that, this is a time for the Speaker, the President, and the Chief Justice to come together. If anybody thinks that this matter can resolve itself, then they have to think again. We have not consolidated our democracy enough to the extent that, matters such as this can be resolved through our democratic processes or through the institutions that we have established.
Dr.
And that
Dramani,
is why, yes.
Please land on your point.
Oh, and so that is why, at this point, it's important that the three arms of government come together in some form of dialogue. And then also, not only that, where are our elders? Rather than fueling the fire, I think our elders should speak some language that will bring cool heads, that will calm the emotions that are rising on both sides.
All right.
Because if we have our elders coming out to say people should read the law, people should, this is not the time for that. I think it's important that, at this moment, we want to make sure that dialogue takes place and some agreement to disagree, at least, is arrived at, so that tomorrow we save our image as a country.
It'll be a good time to have your take on tomorrow, because you've been monitoring Parliament for years. How do you anticipate tomorrow will be like in Parliament?
Yeah, if some urgent interventions do not take place, we are going to see two majorities in Parliament tomorrow. And I think what follows is anybody's guess. I don't know how and what the Speaker is going to say. Maybe the Right Honourable Speaker might save the day. But let me say this, and going back to judicial reviews and intervention in parliamentary matters, I think most of us were hoping that the Supreme Court will put finality to this matter by interpreting the law as it should be, so that all of us would, particularly given the rising tension. But that did not happen, and a stay in a decision of a speaker is a novelty. And so that is why tomorrow will be an interesting day, but we don't have to wait for tomorrow. I think the work has to be done now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Dramani. Thank you for talking to us. That's it for Election Brief with me, Emefa Akosia Adeti. There's more on myjoyonline.com.